AI isn't an ESG risk necessarily in itself, right? It's just a technology, and it's a transformational technology that's going to really change how a lot of businesses operate and how a lot of businesses run. The way that we've thought about it is more how AI can sort of be integrated against existing ESG factors.
Welcome to The Greener Way. My name is Rose Mary Petrass, Senior Journalist at FS Sustainability. We are recording on Gadigal land and we pay our respects to traditional custodians of country and elders past, present and emerging. Today we're diving into responsible AI use. With the rapid adoption of AI technologies, companies are facing growing pressure to ensure their AI practices are ethical, transparent, and aligned with ESG principles. But what does responsible AI look like in practice, and how should investors approach this emerging frontier to manage risks and seize opportunities? Joining us today to unpack these questions is Jessica Cairns, Head of ESG and Sustainability at Alphinity Investment Management. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about the responsible AI framework that you've worked on with the CSIRO. Why did you decide to work on this topic, and what gave rise to this research?
Yeah, so essentially what we have done is published a responsible AI framework as well as an insights report and toolkit for investors in May this year. And that was following 12 months of sort of research partnership with the Data 61 team at the CSIRO. This project, it's quite interesting for us. We started considering the implications of AI probably coming up to like 3 years ago now. And it's really in the context of our global equities funds where we held companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple. And one of our portfolio managers actually identified, AI as an emerging ESG risk. And we started having discussions on how we should actually analyze that within our processes, and realized quite quickly we didn't actually know how, and we didn't have any structures to be able, to help us think through what those implications were. So we engaged with the CSIRO team initially as an expert in the field just to help us understand, risks and implications and what we could do. And they were in the process of working with the National Centre for Responsible AI. We're also working with a lot of Australian businesses like Wesfarmers and Commonwealth Bank, and we're looking for partners in the finance industry. So it was quite an organic, partnership from that perspective, and we signed an agreement in January 2023. So from there, we conducted detailed engagements with companies. So we spoke to close to 30 companies across global and Australian equities, and then worked with the Data 61 team to sort of develop the framework throughout the back half of last year and, published this year.
What are the key problems that investors face when it comes to AI governance?
The biggest issue is really sort of transparency, but also understanding of what good governance actually looks like. So, for instance, when we did the work through our engagements, we about 40% of the companies that we spoke to had some sort of policy or framework already on responsible AI, but only 10% of those actually published anything. And before going into those interviews, we did like a screen across company reporting. There was very limited disclosure. And to be fair, this is 2022 reports. So this is sort of almost pre-ChatGPT, and, some of that's changed now, but quite limited information. And in terms of good governance, there's not a lot of really, standout examples in the responsible AI space. So for us, that's why we felt it was quite important to think about this framework and really share that knowledge with investors, because we have three parts. We have a governance component, we have a use case component, and we also have a deep dive review component.
What are the key suggestions that you would make to investors?
So I think one of the big lessons that we learned out of doing this research is that when we as investors are thinking about the ESG implications of AI and AI applications, it's really important to start with the use case first. So rather than just sort of having like a broad discussion with companies or doing broad analysis around AI, really thinking about what the particular use case is for that individual company, because that dictates what the implications are. So for example, if a bank is thinking about using AI in fraud detection, the ESG implications of that is really about sort of data privacy and cybersecurity and making sure that they're protecting that information adequately, but also that they're thinking about, working with the appropriate regulators or whatever to share information on, crime in that area. If they were, for instance, using AI for credit screening or credit decision-making, the implications are much different. Like that really becomes a really significant social license risk to that bank. If they were making, credit decisions based on biased data, for instance, that would be problematic. But it can also be like a financial inclusion story. If they're able to use that information to actually improve credit screening and increase access for people that maybe can't access the network normally or have trouble accessing financial products normally, then that can, be a good thing. It's not really a risk, it's an opportunity. So really kind of stepping through what those use cases are and then thinking about the different implications is probably like the main suggestion, because that personally for me was the big takeaway and something that we put in the framework. So step 1 of the framework is a use case analysis where we've actually identified a bunch of different use cases across key sectors and done a preliminary environmental and social sort of materiality assessment to, but investors can use that as a template to use that for their own analysis as well.
How can investors go about integrating AI into existing ESG frameworks and considerations?
Yeah, and I think this is the other sort of important thing, that AI isn't an ESG risk necessarily in itself, right? It's just a technology, and it's a transformational technology that's going to really change how a lot of businesses operate and how a lot of businesses run. The way that we've thought about it is more how AI can sort of be integrated against existing ESG factors. So we've identified 9 specific ESG factors that we think can be influenced by the use of AI. So for example, labour management. And again, all of these can be positive and negative. So for labour management, the risk is that the use of AI reduces headcount and results in, some people need to lose their jobs or transition into other roles. The opportunity is that AI can also enable like resource-constrained industries to work more efficiently. So for example, healthcare, if doctors are using AI for sort of pre-screening on, for certain disease management, that helps where we know that there's a doctor shortage, there's a nursing shortage, particularly in areas, in emerging markets. So labour management is one, diversity and inclusion is another, human rights, environment and emissions. As I say, that there's 9 different factors. So what we have done is sort of thought about, how AI influences each of those factors, thought about it from that use case perspective, and then started integrating that into our assessments. So where we have a particular company that we know is using AI, if we have questions, we run that through our framework to identify if we think it's a risk or opportunity for the business, if there's any further questions, and then usually conduct detailed engagements to actually go through how the business is therefore thinking about the responsible AI sort of overlay.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jessica. Where can people find this report and other resources that can help them with responsible AI use?
Yes, so we have published the framework on our website. So at alphinity.com.au, under the Insight section, you'll find a sort of report that presents a bunch of takeaways from our engagements as well, good practice case studies from some of the companies that we spoke to, and then also an Excel toolkit, which is essentially the template that we invite investors to. It's open sourced, so they can take it and use it however sort of suits for them.
Until next time, I'm Rose Mary Petrass, and thank you for listening to The Greener Way.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability, a show about people, the planet, and investing in our collective future. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. The Greener Way podcast gives listeners access to information and educational content provided by discussing numerous financial sustainable options and our featured guests. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of The Greener Way are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com. www.fs.org.au.